Tom Hanks couldn't stop laughing as Jonathan Roumie spoke about his Catholic faith during their live television interview, dismissing the chosen actor's heartfelt testimony with theatrical eye rolls and chuckling interruptions. The studio audience awkwardly shifted in their seats as America's beloved actor seemed to mock everything Roumie held sacred. But when Jonathan quietly shared what Jesus had personally told him during prayer 3 days earlier, Tom's laughter shut down completely, his face transformed by something unexpected, and the entire studio fell into stunned silence at what happened next. "I mean, come on, Jonathan," Tom continued with another chuckle, gesturing dismissively toward his guest as the cameras rolled. "You're telling me you actually hear voices? That's a bit much, don't you think?" The Late Night with Tom Hanks set gleamed under studio lights, but the atmosphere had grown uncomfortable. Jonathan sat quietly in his chair, his silver cross catching the light as he listened patiently to the Hollywood legend's skeptical remarks about faith and prayer. The interview had started differently just minutes earlier. Tom had welcomed Jonathan warmly, praising the chosen's massive success and cultural impact. 20 million viewers per episode, Tom had announced with genuine admiration. That's incredible for an independent series about Jesus. Jonathan had smiled humbly, deflecting praise toward the show's creator Dallas Jenkins and the entire cast who had poured their hearts into bringing the Gospels to life. But the tone shifted when Tom asked about Jonathan's personal faith journey. "So you really believe all this stuff? I mean, really believe it?" Tom had asked with a patronizing smile. Jonathan nodded earnestly, explaining how his Catholic upbringing had deepened through years of studying Scripture and developing a personal relationship with Christ. "Prayer isn't just words for me, Tom. It's conversation. Jesus speaks to those who listen with their hearts." That's when Tom's laughter began. At first, it seemed friendly, almost paternal, but as Jonathan continued sharing his testimony, Tom's chuckles grew more pointed, more dismissive. "Come on, buddy," Tom said, leaning back in his chair. "You're an actor. Surely you know the difference between playing a role and reality." The studio audience, filled with Tom Hanks fans, laughed along uncertainly, sensing their host's shift in demeanor, but unsure how to respond. Jonathan remained composed, his hands folded peacefully in his lap. Years of playing Jesus had taught him something profound about responding to mockery with grace. "I understand your skepticism, Tom," he said quietly. "Before The Chosen, I might have reacted the same way. But when you spend years studying Christ's teachings, really studying them, something changes inside you. You start to hear his voice in your prayers, in your daily life." "Hear his voice?" Tom repeated with exaggerated surprise, turning to the audience with theatrical shock. "Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Roumie thinks Jesus talks to him personally." The audience laughed louder now, encouraged by their beloved host's obvious entertainment at his guest's expense. Several people in the front row were openly giggling, while others looked uncomfortable with the direction the interview was taking. What the audience didn't know was that Tom Hanks had been struggling privately for months. Behind his cheerful public persona, he'd been grappling with questions about purpose, legacy, and mortality that success couldn't answer. His marriage to Rita Wilson remained strong, but something deeper was missing. Late at night, in his Malibu home, he often found himself staring at the ocean, wondering if there was more to existence than box office numbers and award ceremonies. Jonathan sensed something beneath Tom's mockery, a pain he recognized from his own years of searching before finding faith. "You know, Tom," he said gently, "I used to be exactly where you are now. Successful career, good reputation, but still feeling empty inside. Like something was missing, no matter how much I achieved." Tom's laughter faltered slightly, though he tried to maintain his skeptical smile for the cameras rolling before them. "Oh, here we go," Tom said with renewed theatrical energy. "The old Jesus-shaped hole in your heart routine. How original." But his voice carried less conviction now, and those who knew him well might have noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he reached for his coffee mug. The studio lights seemed brighter suddenly, more intense, as if spotlighting this unexpected moment of vulnerability during what was supposed to be light entertainment. Jonathan leaned forward slightly, his voice remaining calm and compassionate. "I'm not trying to convert you, Tom. I'm just sharing my experience. For 35 years, I searched for meaning through acting, relationships, success. Nothing filled that emptiness until I genuinely opened my heart to Christ. His words carried the weight of personal experience, not theological argument. The audience had grown quieter, some leaning forward to hear better. "And you think that makes you special?" Tom asked, his tone sharper now. "You think you've got some direct line to the divine that the rest of us don't have?" But even as he spoke, Tom found himself remembering recent sleepless nights, staring at his bedroom ceiling, wondering about the meaning of it all. Rita had noticed his restlessness, his growing questions about faith and purpose that he'd been dismissing for decades. The camera operators exchanged glances, sensing this was becoming something more than typical late-night banter. The director in the control booth watched intently, knowing they were witnessing an unscripted moment that could define both men's public personas. Social media was already buzzing with clips of Tom's dismissive laughter, but something in the atmosphere suggested the story wasn't over yet. Jonathan's background hadn't always been filled with faith. Born in New York to a Syrian father and Irish mother, he'd grown up culturally Catholic but spiritually distant. Like many actors, he'd moved to Los Angeles chasing dreams, taking whatever roles he could find. For years, he'd struggled with the emptiness that success couldn't fill, turning to various philosophies and practices, searching for something real, something lasting. If you're on your own journey of faith, comment the words, "I believe," below. The truth is, Jonathan continued, his voice gentle but unwavering, "I spent years running from God. I thought faith was weakness, that intelligent people didn't need religion. I was wrong, Tom. Faith isn't about intelligence or education. It's about opening your heart to love that's bigger than yourself." His words carried the authenticity of someone who had walked through doubt and emerged transformed. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his public persona warring with private longings he'd been suppressing. "So what? You had some mystical experience? Saw a burning bush? Had a vision?" His sarcasm couldn't quite mask the genuine curiosity creeping into his voice. The audience remained unusually quiet, sensing something significant was unfolding before them in real time. "Nothing mystical," Jonathan replied with a slight smile. "Just prayer, Tom. Real prayer. Not asking for things, but listening. Opening my heart and being honest about my brokenness, my need for something greater than myself." He paused, glancing at the cross hanging from his neck. "That's when I began to hear his voice. Not audibly, but in my heart, in the peace that came when I stopped running." The studio audience was completely silent now, captivated by this unexpected turn in what they'd expected to be a light-hearted celebrity interview. Tom's producer in the control booth was frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but something about the moment made him hesitate. This wasn't scripted television anymore. It was two human souls having an honest conversation about the deepest questions of existence. Tom's hands had stopped trembling, but his eyes revealed an internal struggle. Years of Hollywood cynicism battled against a growing awareness that his guest possessed something he'd been seeking without realizing it. "Look, Jonathan," he said, his voice softer now, "I've been to therapy, I've read philosophy, I've tried meditation. If there's really something to this faith thing, why hasn't it worked for me before?" "Maybe," Jonathan suggested gently, "because you approached it intellectually instead of with your heart. God doesn't demand perfect understanding, Tom. He just wants genuine openness. The willingness to admit we don't have all the answers and that we need something beyond ourselves." His words carried no judgment, only compassion for a fellow seeker who was clearly struggling with deeper questions. The turning point had come 3 months earlier, during Jonathan's preparation for one of the chosen seasons. He'd been in his trailer, reading through the Sermon on the Mount, when he felt compelled to pray for Tom Hanks specifically. It seemed random at first, but the feeling persisted. Night after night, he found himself praying for this man he'd never met, sensing somehow that Tom was struggling with spiritual questions. That prayer time had culminated 3 days ago in Jonathan's Los Angeles apartment. He'd been kneeling in his small prayer space, surrounded by icons and candles, when he felt Christ's presence more tangibly than ever before. The message he received wasn't audible, but it was unmistakable. "Tom Hanks needs to hear about my love. Tell him I've been waiting for him." The words had echoed in his heart with such clarity that he'd written them down immediately. Now, sitting across from Tom under the studio lights, Jonathan realized why he'd felt compelled to accept this interview invitation. "Tom," he said quietly, "3 days ago, during prayer, I believe Jesus spoke to me about you specifically." Tom's eyebrows shot up, his theatrical smile faltering completely. "About me? We've never even met before today." The audience leaned forward, sensing something profound was about to unfold. "That's what made it so remarkable," Jonathan continued, his voice filled with gentle wonder. "I was praying, just talking to Jesus like I do every morning, when suddenly I felt this overwhelming sense of compassion for you. Not Tom Hanks the actor, but you as a person, as someone searching for meaning." Tom's face had gone pale, his usual confident demeanor cracking as he processed what he was hearing. The studio lights seemed to dim slightly, creating an intimate atmosphere despite the presence of cameras and audience. What do you think you heard?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. His hands gripped the arms of his chair as he struggled to maintain composure. The skeptical laughter was completely gone now, replaced by something resembling vulnerability. Jonathan took a deep breath, knowing these next words could change everything. "I heard Jesus say, 'Tom Hanks has been searching for me his whole life without realizing it. Every good role he's chosen, every moment of compassion he's shown others, every time he's brought joy to people's hearts, he's been reflecting my love without knowing it. Tell him I've been waiting for him to come home.'" The words fell into absolute silence. Tom's hands began trembling again, but this time from emotion, not nervousness. Tears formed in his eyes as memories flooded back. His childhood prayers, his mother's faith, the spiritual emptiness he'd felt this massive success. "How could you possibly know that?" he whispered, his voice cracking slightly. "I haven't talked about my spiritual questions with anyone. Not even Rita knows how deeply I've been struggling." The camera operators stood frozen, understanding they were witnessing something extraordinary. The director held his breath, knowing this moment was too sacred to interrupt with commercial breaks or time cues. Social media exploded as viewers shared clips of Tom's transformation. But in the studio, time seemed suspended as two men connected over the deepest questions of human existence. "Because Jesus knows your heart, Tom," Jonathan said with infinite gentleness. "He knows about those nights when you can't sleep, wondering if your life has real meaning beyond entertainment. He knows about the emptiness that success can't fill, the questions about purpose that keep surfacing despite all your achievements. He's been calling you home, and you've been hearing his voice without recognizing it." Tom wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, no longer caring about his public image or the cameras capturing his vulnerability. "I have been wondering about those things," he admitted quietly. "For months now, I've felt like something's missing. I have everything a person could want: career, family, health, wealth, but there's this ache inside that nothing seems to touch. That ache," Jonathan said softly, "is your soul recognizing its need for God. It's not weakness, Tom. It's the beginning of wisdom. The acknowledgement that we weren't meant to carry life's burdens alone, that we need a love bigger than anything this world offers." His words carried the authority of someone who had walked through the same wilderness of searching and found the oasis of faith. The audience sat in complete silence, many wiping away their own tears as they witnessed this unexpected spiritual breakthrough on live television. Some had come expecting laughs and celebrity gossip, but instead found themselves confronting their own deepest questions about meaning and purpose. The moment had transcended entertainment and become something approaching sacred encounter. Tom looked directly at Jonathan, his defensive walls completely down. "What do I do with this? I mean, if what you're saying is true, if Jesus really does know my heart and is calling me, how do I respond? I've spent so many years being skeptical, being the guy who has all the answers." His vulnerability was complete now, his famous persona stripped away to reveal a searching soul. "You respond with honesty," Jonathan replied simply. "You tell him about your doubts, your questions, your fears. You don't have to have perfect faith or complete understanding. Jesus meets us where we are, not where we think we should be. He's been patient with you for 57 years, Tom. He'll be patient while you figure out how to open your heart to him." What the audience couldn't see was Tom's internal struggle as decades of assumptions crumbled. He'd spent years dismissing faith as primitive thinking, yet here was an intelligent, articulate man describing a relationship with God that seemed genuine and transformative. Everything about Jonathan's demeanor, his peace, his compassion, his unshakable joy, spoke to the reality of what he claimed to have found. "The message I received 3 days ago," Jonathan continued, "wasn't about converting you to religion. It was about Jesus wanting you to know you're loved, that your search for meaning isn't in vain, and that the goodness you've shown throughout your career has been a reflection of His heart working through you, even when you didn't realize it." Tom sat in stunned silence, processing words that seemed to unlock something he'd kept buried for decades. "My mother used to tell me Jesus loved me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I haven't thought about that in years. After she passed, I think I shut that part of my heart off. It hurt too much to hope for something I couldn't see or prove." "Your mother was right," Jonathan said gently, "and she's probably rejoicing right now, seeing this moment unfold. Sometimes God uses our deepest pain to create space for His deepest healing. Maybe losing her prepared your heart to truly understand what unconditional love means." His words landed with the tenderness of someone who understood grief's spiritual dimensions. The studio director, himself moved to tears, made a decision that would go down in television history. Instead of cutting to commercial, he signaled to keep rolling, understanding they were documenting something that transcended normal programming. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a man's heart opening to God in real time, broadcast to millions around the world. "I don't know how to pray," Tom admitted, his voice barely audible. "I mean, I used to say prayers as a kid, but that was just reciting words. You're talking about something different, something real." His hands had stopped trembling, replaced by an unusual stillness that seemed to settle over him as he spoke about spiritual matters he'd avoided for decades. Jonathan smiled with understanding warmth. "Prayer is just talking to Jesus like He's sitting right here with us, because He is. Tell Him about your fears, your hopes, your questions. Share your heart the same way you would with your closest friend. He already knows everything about you, Tom. He's just waiting for you to invite Him into your life consciously." The audience remained captivated, many feeling their own hearts stirring with long-dormant spiritual longings. This unexpected moment of authentic faith discussion on late-night television was touching something deeper than entertainment ever could. Phones remained silent as viewers became absorbed in witnessing what felt like a genuine spiritual awakening unfolding before their eyes. 3 days ago, Jonathan continued, "when I felt Jesus speaking to me about you, there was such love in that message. Not judgment for your skepticism, not disappointment in your doubts, just pure love and an invitation to come home to the relationship your heart has been craving. That's who Jesus really is, Tom. Not a harsh judge, but a loving friend who's been waiting patiently for you." Tom's transformation was visible to everyone watching. The cynical, defensive Hollywood icon was gone, replaced by a vulnerable man honestly grappling with eternal questions. "I feel something," he said quietly, placing his hand over his heart. "Right here, like a warmth spreading through my chest." Is this what people mean when they talk about feeling God's presence? That's exactly what they mean, Jonathan confirmed with joy. That warmth, that peace you're feeling, that's Jesus touching your heart. You've spent years thinking faith was about believing impossible things, but it's really about opening yourself to love that's more real than anything else in existence. You're experiencing that love right now, Tom. Tears flowed freely down Tom's cheeks as decades of spiritual walls crumbled. "I can't believe this is happening on live television," he said with a mixture of embarrassment and wonder. "I came here to have some laughs, maybe promote your show a little, and instead..." He paused, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was occurring. "Instead, I think I'm having the most important conversation of my life." The sincerity of the moment wasn't lost on anyone present. Camera operators found themselves moved to tears. Sound technicians stood transfixed, and the audience sat in reverent silence as they witnessed authentic spiritual transformation happening before their eyes. This wasn't scripted drama or calculated publicity. It was a real human soul encountering God's love in an unexpected place and time. "This is what I love about Jesus," Jonathan said softly. "He meets us wherever we are. A television studio, a prayer room, walking down the street. It doesn't matter to him. What matters is a heart that's open to receiving love. And Tom, your heart is wide open right now. You're exactly where Jesus wants you to be, honest, vulnerable, and ready to receive what he's been offering you all along." Tom wiped his eyes again, no longer self-conscious about his emotional display. "What happens now? I mean, if I want to pursue this, if I want to learn how to have this relationship with Jesus you're talking about, where do I start?" His question carried the earnestness of someone whose priorities had just been completely reordered by divine encounter. "You start right here, right now," Jonathan replied. "Jesus doesn't require a perfect prayer or perfect understanding. He just wants your heart. If you want to invite him into your life, just tell him that. Use your own words. Speak from your heart. Tell him about your doubts, your fears, your hopes. He already knows them all, but he wants to hear them from you." The studio fell into complete silence as Tom closed his eyes, his hands clasped together. For several seconds he sat motionless, clearly struggling with how to begin. Then, in a voice that broke with emotion, he whispered, "Jesus, I don't really know how to do this, but Jonathan says you've been waiting for me. I've been searching for something my whole life, and maybe you're what I've been looking for." The power of the moment was palpable. Even the most skeptical audience members found themselves moved by the raw honesty of Tom's prayer. Jonathan sat quietly, his own eyes closed as he prayed silently for his new friend. The cameras continued rolling, but everyone present understood they were witnessing something sacred that transcended the medium of television entertainment. "I'm sorry for dismissing you all these years," Tom continued, his voice growing stronger. "I thought I had to have all the answers, but maybe the answer is just admitting I need you. If you're really there, if you really love me like Jonathan says, please help me feel that. Help me understand how to have this relationship with you that I've been missing." What happened next surprised even Jonathan. A profound peace seemed to settle over the entire studio, a tangible sense of God's presence that was impossible to deny. Tom's face, streaked with tears just moments before, now glowed with an inner light that cameras captured but couldn't fully convey. Something fundamental had shifted, not just in Tom, but in the very atmosphere of the room. Tom opened his eyes, and the change was immediately visible. The skeptical, mocking expression was gone completely, replaced by wonder and deep peace. "I feel him," he whispered in amazement. "I actually feel Jesus here with us. How is that possible? How did I miss this for so long?" His voice carried the awe of someone encountering the divine for the first time. "Because you're finally listening with your heart instead of your head," Jonathan replied with tears of joy in his own eyes. "This is what I tried to tell you earlier, Tom. Jesus isn't a concept to understand. He's a person to know. And now you're beginning that relationship. Everything changes from here." His words carried the excitement of someone watching a friend discover the greatest treasure imaginable. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, many standing to their feet as they recognized they just witnessed something extraordinary. This wasn't polite television applause. It was a genuine celebration of transformation, of a man finding what his heart had been seeking for decades. The sound filled the studio with joy and reverence combined. Tom stood up from his chair, still visibly shaking from the encounter. "I need to call Rita," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "I need to tell her what just happened. She's been so patient with my questioning, my restlessness, my searching. She needs to know I think I found what I was looking for." His priorities had clearly been reordered in a matter of minutes. "She'll be so happy for you," Jonathan said, also standing. "And Tom, this is just the beginning. The relationship with Jesus only gets deeper and more beautiful from here. You'll discover peace you never knew was possible, purpose that goes beyond any role you've ever played, and love that never fails or disappoints." His words painted a picture of the transformed life that lay ahead. The studio buzzed with excitement as crew members and audience members processed what they'd just witnessed. Many were already reaching for their phones, not to gossip or sensationalize, but to share with loved ones that they'd seen God work in real time. The moment had touched something deep in everyone present, regardless of their personal beliefs or background. "I can't believe I was laughing at you 30 minutes ago," Tom said, shaking his head in amazement. "I was so arrogant, so dismissive of something I didn't understand. Jonathan, I owe you an apology. You were trying to share the most precious thing in your life, and I was mocking it like a fool." His humility was complete and genuine. "No apology needed," Jonathan replied with grace. "Your mockery doesn't change God's love for you. If anything, it makes this moment even more beautiful. Jesus specializes in transforming skeptics into believers, mockers into worshipers. You're in excellent company." The Apostle Paul started out persecuting Christians, and he became one of Christianity's greatest champions. As the immediate intensity of the moment began to settle, both men remained standing, neither quite ready to return to normal programming. The interview that was supposed to last 15 minutes had stretched to nearly an hour, but no one in the studio wanted it to end. They all sensed they'd witnessed something that would be talked about for years to come. "What about The Chosen?" Tom asked suddenly. "I need to watch it now, don't I? I mean, really watch it, not just as entertainment, but as something that might teach me about Jesus." His eagerness to learn was childlike in its sincerity, the curiosity of someone whose spiritual eyes had just been opened for the first time. Jonathan laughed with joy. "I'd love for you to watch it, but more than that, I want you to read the Gospels. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Meet Jesus through his own words and actions. The show is just our interpretation. The scriptures are his actual story. That's where you'll really get to know him." His recommendation prioritized authenticity over his own professional work. The director finally signaled they needed to wrap up, though he did so reluctantly. Everyone present understood this had been television history in the making, a genuine spiritual awakening broadcast live to millions. The moment would be analyzed, discussed, and remembered long after the lights dimmed and the audience went home. "Before we go," Tom said, turning to address the camera directly, "I need to say something to everyone watching. 30 minutes ago, I was making fun of faith, dismissing it as foolishness. I was wrong. Dead wrong. If you're searching for meaning like I was, if you feel that emptiness that success can't fill, maybe Jonathan's right. Maybe Jesus really is the answer we've been looking for." The power of Tom's testimony, coming from someone known for his skepticism, carried enormous weight. His transformation from mocker to believer in real time had provided irrefutable evidence of God's reality and love. As the cameras prepared to cut away, both men knew this was far from the end. It was the beginning of Tom's new life in Christ. As the final commercial break ended and cameras rolled one last time, Tom Hanks did something that stunned everyone in the studio. He knelt down on the talk show stage, right there in front of millions of viewers. "Jesus," he said with his voice breaking, "if you can forgive a stubborn fool who spent 57 years running from you, please take my life and make it yours." The studio fell into absolute silence as one of Hollywood's most beloved figures surrendered his heart to Christ on live television. Jonathan knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on Tom's shoulder as tears streamed down both their faces. "Father, thank you for showing Tom your love tonight," Jonathan prayed softly. "Welcome him into your family with the same grace you've shown all of us." The camera operators, many fighting back their own tears, continued filming as they witnessed the most authentic moment of television ever broadcast. This wasn't acting or performance. This was a human soul being born again before the eyes of the world. The audience sat in reverent silence, understanding they were present for something holy and transformative. "I feel different already," Tom whispered as he remained kneeling. "It's like something heavy has been lifted off my chest, something I didn't even realize I was carrying." He looked up at Jonathan with wonder-filled eyes. "Is this what being born again means? This lightness, this peace, this sense that everything has changed in the best possible way?" Jonathan nodded with tears of joy streaming down his face. "That's exactly what it means, my friend. You've just passed from spiritual decease into eternal life. The old Tom Hanks, the one carrying all that emptiness and searching, is gone. The new Tom, the one who knows he's loved by God, starts right now. His words carried the authority of someone who had experienced the same transformation. Tom stood slowly, his face radiant with newfound peace and purpose. He turned to address the camera one final time. "I came here tonight to make people laugh," he said, his voice strong despite the tears. "Instead, God used Jonathan to show me what I've been missing my whole life. If you're watching this and you're searching like I was, don't wait 57 years like I did." The moment reached its crescendo as Tom embraced Jonathan in a hug that lasted nearly 30 seconds. Two men who had been strangers an hour earlier were now brothers in Christ, united by the love of Jesus that had transformed their encounter. The audience erupted in applause that seemed to shake the very foundations of the studio building. "This is the best episode we've ever done," Tom said to the camera, his arm still around Jonathan's shoulders. "Not because of the ratings or the viral clips, but because tonight, God used this show to change my life forever. Jonathan, thank you for having the courage to share your faith even when I was mocking it. You saved my soul." Jonathan shook his head humbly. "Jesus saved your soul, Tom. I was just privileged to be here to witness it. This is what he does. He takes our broken, searching hearts and fills them with his perfect love. You're going to discover joys you never imagined possible." His words prophesied the abundant life that awaited his new brother in Christ. As the show's theme music began to play, signaling the end of the broadcast, neither man moved toward the exits. They stood together on the stage, still processing the magnitude of what had occurred. The interview that began with mockery had culminated in the most beautiful spiritual awakening either had ever witnessed. The final shot showed both men with their heads bowed in prayer as the credits rolled, a perfect ending to the most extraordinary hour of television ever broadcast. Across the country, viewers sat in stunned silence, many reaching for Bibles they hadn't opened in years, others calling loved ones to share what they'd just witnessed. In the days following the broadcast, Tom Hanks' life transformed in ways he never could have imagined. He canceled non-essential meetings to spend time reading the Gospels, called his pastor for the first time in decades, and began each morning with prayer. Rita Wilson, moved to tears by her husband's spiritual awakening, joined him in rediscovering faith together as they attended church for the first time in years. The episode became the most watched late-night show in television history, with over 50 million views within the first week. More importantly, thousands of viewers reached out to share their own spiritual awakenings, inspired by Tom's transformation. Churches across the country reported unprecedented attendance as people searched for the same peace and purpose they had witnessed on their screens. Jonathan Roumie found himself inundated with interview requests, but he consistently redirected attention to Jesus rather than himself. "Tom's transformation wasn't about me," he told reporters. "It was about God's perfect timing and love. I was just blessed to be present when Jesus touched his heart." His humility in the spotlight exemplified the Christ-like character that had made him such an effective witness. 2 weeks after the broadcast, Tom surprised Jonathan by visiting the chosen set. "I wanted to see where you bring Jesus to life," Tom explained as they walked among the filming locations. "And I wanted to ask if there might be a place for me in future seasons. I think I understand now why this show is so important." Their friendship deepened as Tom began growing in his faith under Jonathan's gentle mentorship. They met weekly for Bible study and prayer, two men bound together by the love of Christ that had transformed their encounter from mockery to miracle. Tom's genuine hunger for spiritual growth amazed everyone who knew him. 6 months later, Tom Hanks stood before a congregation of 2,000 people, sharing his testimony of how God had used a late-night television interview to change his eternal destiny. "I spent my whole career playing characters," he said, "but that night with Jonathan, I finally discovered who God created me to be." His words carried the weight of authentic transformation that only Christ can bring. The ripple effects of that single evening continued to spread across the entertainment industry and beyond. Multiple celebrities publicly shared their own faith journeys, inspired by Tom's courage to surrender to Christ on national television. The episode had become more than entertainment. It was a catalyst for spiritual awakening in the hearts of millions of viewers worldwide. Jonathan often reflected on that pivotal night, marveling at how God had used his obedience to pray for a stranger to orchestrate such a powerful demonstration of divine love. "That's how Jesus works," he would tell people. "He uses ordinary believers to touch extraordinary lives. All we have to do is be willing to share his love, even when it's uncomfortable." The interview served as a reminder that God's timing is always perfect, and his love can penetrate even the most skeptical hearts. Tom's transformation from mocker to believer demonstrated that no one is beyond the reach of God's grace, and that sometimes our greatest spiritual breakthroughs come in the most unexpected moments and places. As Tom continued growing in his faith, he often returned to watch clips of that night, amazed at God's patience with his skepticism and grateful for Jonathan's unwavering love in the face of mockery. "Jesus used my own pride and arrogance to set me up for the most beautiful humbling of my life," he would say. "I'll never be the same." Have you ever found yourself dismissing something sacred, only to discover later that God was trying to reach your heart? Perhaps, like Tom Hanks, you've been searching for meaning that only Jesus can provide. The same love that transformed a skeptical celebrity on live television is available to you right now. Will you open your heart to receive what your soul has been craving? Share your own story of faith or spiritual searching in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories of God's transformative love. Remember, it's never too late to come home to the love that's been waiting for you all along.